All right, Gator fans, I am here with Andy Staples from On3, also Gator legend, here to talk a little
Legend.
bit.
Legendary tackling dummy?
Yeah, legendary
Like
tackling dummy.
didn't accidentally trip a starter, like no starter tripped over my lifeless body and hurt their knee or anything.
I
That's
mean,
pretty much the main accomplishment for me. So
well, listen, we the tackling dummies may put in the very hardest work, so we're gonna go with
I
your
like to
on
think
this show.
so.
Yeah,
Except I think it's probably hard to be really good at football. So I think that probably is a little tougher.
that's true too.
But yeah, no, it is this has been interesting. Quite an off season. Lots to talk about all the time.
All the time, and it just keeps getting better. So right now, obviously, big huge story is the injunction against the NCAA. They can't enforce rules on NIL currently. So how many teams do you think are taking advantage of this right now versus how many are like, still hanging out and being cautious?
All of them are taking advantage of it right now. Because here's the thing, all of them were doing this stuff before,
Right.
but they were doing it at least trying to do it within the rules because nobody was doing it within the rules. Everybody was hawking money with players, but
Mhm.
nobody was putting it in writing. Like that's the like the whole Jaden Rashada thing, the fact that there was a contract, there were numbers, it was before he enrolled. The Nico Iamaleava thing, same thing. There was a contract, there were numbers, it was before he enrolled. Like what teams have been doing since January of 2023, which is when the NCAA said, "Hey, we're gonna crack down on this."
Right.
What collectives have been doing is they've been talking money with people, but saying we're not putting it in writing.
Right.
We're going to come to an agreement verbally, but we're not going to put it in writing. And when you get on campus, we'll put it in writing. Well, that's a problem. Like that's always going to be a problem because we can talk and one of us can hear one thing and one of us can hear the other, something else.
Sure.
And also, once the thing's agreed upon, somebody can go back and say, or like once a guy's on campus, a collective can go back and say, well, it's this number. And it might not be the same number,
Right.
but they've already got you at that point.
Right.
Now you could transfer, so there is enough leverage to kind of keep it. But or the player gets on campus and the collective's like, okay, here's the deal we talked about. And the player, the parent, the person, whoever it is, the agent goes, well, man, we think it might need to be a little more. And so you have issues, disagreements, like those are bound to happen when you have nothing in writing.
Right.
And you're dealing with, and like with some of these parents and players, they're dealing with multiple offers. They're dealing with all these different collectives. Like they're trying to figure out what to do, and they don't have anything in writing. So you're going to see stuff in writing now because the rules aren't in place. That they're not going to be enforced, and I don't think the rules are ever coming back. I think the judge in that case has made it pretty evident that the NCAA is going to lose the case. This is a bench trial. This wouldn't be a jury trial. I guess the NCAA could demand a jury trial, but that's probably going to go
That's not going to go
just
any
as bad.
faster. Right.
But it would be a bench trial, so that judge is the person who would decide.
Right.
And he's already said you're going to lose.
So is it ultimately maybe a bad thing to have zero guardrails in place?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think there should be a happy medium between what happened 20 years ago, 10 years ago, where the players had no rights, no leverage, no nothing. And now they have all the leverage.
Right.
Like there should be a balance there. There's a way to get to it and a legal way to get to it, but it requires probably them being employees. It requires them having a union and negotiating a CBA, just like you see in the pro sports. You could have real rules there, actual enforceable rules. And I don't think they would make as much money as they make now if that happened. Like if I'm a player, I'm like, no. We're not, don't make us employees. We're not going to unionize. Let's just keep this. But I don't think you're going to be able to keep this. I think the schools are going to say this is kind of impractical to do. But I do think the market would kind of work itself out because I was on another show earlier this week and it's more NFL centric. So the host was asking me like, okay, so even if they had a collective bargaining agreement and a salary cap and all that stuff, wouldn't some booster just come in and buy a national championship. And I'm like, if that were the case, it would have already
Well, I
happened.
was going to say Texas A&M would have a national
Right.
championship.
Texas A&M would have 5 national championships and Oregon would have 10 national. Like, that's not how it works.
Yeah,
There's a finite amount of money. People have to pay for this,
sure.
whether it's,
Well,
you
and
know,
there's so little return on investment for,
yes,
99% of the people that are putting money into this because there's one national champion.
exactly, exactly. So everybody, like all the stuff, the scare tactics that the NCAA people have used, or the people that you argue with on Twitter have used over the years, like just laugh at them. They're always wrong. They've always been wrong. Like every time this happens, they get proven wrong again. Like this is all going to be okay. It's all going to work out. And like the coaches and the ADs saying, well, we need Congress. No, you don't. You do not want Congress to tell you how to run your business.
Right.
Like that's true in any business. But just figure it out yourselves. Understand you're going to have to give a little bigger slice to the players. Understand that mediocre coaches might not make $8 million a year now. It's okay.
So, do you think if this does get regulated and let's say players become employees, do these boundaries, so to speak, get put in place by conferences, by individual universities? Like, where does the regulation come from in the future?
I would suspect it would be by conference. And then, with the Big Ten and the SEC kind of working together now, we'll see what happens on that front. Because I think everybody who works in college sports would like it to stay. It's not really regionalized anymore. I mean, the Big Ten stretches from coast to coast, but would like the different conference flavors to continue to exist.
Sure.
Like, I don't think anybody who actually works in the business wants the Super League,
Right.
other than maybe the TV executives.
Right.
But it may be that that's the most practical way to do it. Like if the Big Ten and the SEC were to band together as a kind of big league, and maybe like you could do it with the 4 power conferences. You could do it. You could have a 48 team league or a 64 team league or however you want to do that. But that may be the only practical way to do it. Because I've talking to ADs about this. Making them employees of the schools is somewhat impractical because you're dealing with a lot of public schools in
Sure.
different states that have different state employment laws, that have different laws for public employees. Like in the state of South Carolina, public employees are not allowed to unionize. So Clemson and South Carolina players
Right.
couldn't be union members
Sure.
as employees of their schools. But if they were employees of their conference, the conference is a private entity. You're only dealing with one state's employment laws at that point. It becomes a little bit easier.
So let's circle this all back to how it affects UF. Obviously,
Yeah.
UF is under investigation currently by the NCAA for the Rashada situation, which we touched on, at the beginning of this. So how do you think this impacts that? And should UF at this point go on the offensive? I know before they were, playing ball with the NCAA. Is that not maybe the move anymore?
Well, Tennessee's shown us it's not the move. I mean, Tennessee, there's a great story by Adam Sparks in the Knoxville News Sentinel on Wednesday where he got public records that show Tennessee started this legal defense in this NCAA case that resulted in this case in the federal court system. They started this over a year ago. They started this before Nico Yamamayalava even enrolled in school because they knew it was going to be a problem.
Right.
And so Florida should go on the offensive about this. And I've always wondered why more schools don't push back on the NCAA with stuff like this, because in this particular case, especially because normally I'm the person who says the schools are the NCAA. They made the rules.
Sure.
They should live with them. But in this case, the schools have never really gotten a chance because everything was happening so fast to really vote on this. It's all been this committee or that committee. And so they've never really gotten a chance to say, here's how we think it should work.
Yeah.
So you could say, hey, we're being prosecuted here over rules we didn't really have a hand in writing. Right. And they certainly didn't have a hand in the guilty until proven innocent facet of this that came along last January, which is something in another committee approved.
Yeah.
And so I would think it would be smart. Now, I don't know that they have to do anything now. Tennessee's done all the hard work for them because at this point, the NCAA can't legally enforce this.
Yeah.
So now they can't enforce it in Tennessee or Virginia, But all Florida has to do is hop on the lawsuit. The state of Florida could
Sure.
hop into the lawsuit.
Which is what I was going to ask you. Do you think the state of Florida does join in this lawsuit?
I think multiple other states will join in if they need to. They might not need to. The NCAA may just drop it. I mean, that's the thing. They may just say the rules are null and void. We're going to figure something else out. Because if they lose the case, then it would apply for the whole country anyway. It would set the precedent for the whole country. So I don't know that they even need to do that now. I think you should feel pretty safe. I think Florida felt fairly safe because they weren't in the position Tennessee was. Tennessee had to do this because Tennessee had weaponized the NCAA to fire Jeremy Pruitt without paying his buyout. Now, they ended up having to pay a bunch of money in a fine to the NCAA, but they didn't want to pay it to Jeremy Pruitt for being a bad coach.
Sure.
And so the problem was, and the thing was, they were going to get caught on that stuff anyway. The stuff that the rule breaking Pruitt did was so obvious and so dumb. Like they were going to get caught one way or the other. So at least they saved the buyout money that way.
Yeah.
The problem was it set them up as a potential repeat violator.
Right.
So they had to go aggressively after this to make sure the NCAA did not have a way to hit them.
Yeah. So when do you think we have some sort of resolution on this? Like, how long does this drag out?
That's a good question, because at this point, if I'm the NCAA, I just tell them to just pause and see what the schools want to do about it and figure it out. If I'm Florida, now I do make contingency plans to either join the lawsuit, do my own lawsuit, figure that part out. But again, because Florida wasn't on the hook as a repeat violator or anything like that, they probably could have negotiated something. I think, they were probably going to sacrifice an off-field staffer like Marcus Castro Walker. Disappeared. Yeah. Like I'm guessing that's who they were going to probably try to sacrifice on this. He was doing the NIL stuff. The collective, they'll say, well, the Gator Collective doesn't even exist anymore. It's been dissolved. And so they probably felt like they could have gotten out of this without too much. Also because Rashada didn't show up. Also because no money ever got paid. But I mean, if you're going by the letter of the law, the contract is pretty clear. It had a payment, like I think December 5th, which was before signing day even. So if they're going to say this is an inducement, they would have been probably correct about that.
Andy, it's always a pleasure. I always enjoy this. Tell everybody where they can find your work.
So On3 Sports YouTube page, hit subscribe. You can get my show every day. It'll tell you when I'm going live. I'm at 8 a.m. Eastern time, Monday through Friday. And of course, you can watch on demand anytime you want. Anywhere you get your podcast, we put out the audio of the show, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, you name it. And you find me Andy_Staples on your favorite social media platforms. If I ever get a six-pack, I'll post more on Instagram, but mostly on Twitter now.
I think that's probably why I'm on Twitter too. But all right, well, we appreciate it. Thanks so much for joining us, and you have a great day.
Thanks, Allie.